Is your AI adoption project likely to fall prey to one of the top 7 problems that affect AI projects? Let's talk about them. And the reason we've developed the AI roadmap is because there are common failure modes for many AI projects, and we're trying to eliminate as many of those as possible in our preferred method of operation. So today let's talk about the top 7 failure modes and if your project is likely to succumb to one of those failures. So the first problem that a lot of projects run into is data quality, and this is mostly due to not taking the time to understand what the data quality requirements of the project are. Now, there are plenty of successful projects that use an off-the-shelf ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot, and they work perfectly fine because their data requirements don't differ from the data requirements of the overall model. But sometimes you need to run your own model with your own data and have it trained the way you need it to be trained in order for the project to be a success. Problem you're trying to solve and what the requirements of that solution are. And so making sure you understand that before you get started goes a long way to making sure that you're using the appropriate level of data cleanliness before you get started. So whenever we do an actual build and to solve a problem, it's best to start thinking about the data quality and the data quality requirements of the solution and what we have available to us. Because sometimes what we need isn't readily available, and we need to factor that into our build. And again, sometimes we don't really need a whole lot. We can get by with what comes out of the box with ChatGPT, and building a custom LLM with our own training data and whatnot is overkill for it. So thinking about data quality, thinking about making sure we use what's appropriate for our requirements is really important to making sure we succeed and have a great budget start to finish. The second problem that we often run into is we don't have clear business objectives. The reason business objectives are important is because we have to be able to do 2 things. One is we need to understand how solving this business problem fits into the overall strategy of the business, and we also need to know whether we were successful in solving the problem. Those are 2 related problems, but they can happen in very many ways. So for example, we may very well solve a problem and have all of the criteria for solving it, but the way we solve it and where we put that problem solution in our overall task list may not fit in with the overall strategy of the business. So we've got a clear win, but it doesn't necessarily support what the business is trying to do. So understanding the overall strategy of the business is really important because that keeps your point solution from being a dead end. Make sure that it either integrates well with what you're doing or you understand if you're taking on some technical debt. Other issue is even if you understand the overall strategy of what you're trying to accomplish and where the business is going, your solution fits in well with that. If the business doesn't have really good measurements of what success is and what success is not, then you can have a project that seems successful but nobody really knows. And also you can kind of fool yourself into thinking that you may have successfully solved a problem and then find out on the floor after it's been deployed that it really hasn't solved what the users needed it to solve. So having clear business objectives is really important so that we can support both our strategy and tactics that help everybody today right on the work floor. Third problem is a talent issue. And in many cases, businesses don't have the talent that's needed to perform some of these AI projects. And we're really starting to see that where AI adoption by individuals is starting to get bifurcated. Some people at the very top are really excited about doing the AI adoption and they're becoming very productive. Some people on the bottom are becoming very recalcitrant and they're starting to not like it, or they've had some failures. And those people are starting to not do the things that needed to learn. They're not learning from their mistakes, they're not learning from failures, and they're becoming very less inclined to use AI. And there's a broad group in the middle that have kind of adopted it for some things and not for others. So this is a three-part problem, and we have to address it as such. And our WSI AI Campus is designed to address all three parts of the problem. So the first part of the problem is that everybody needs to have a foundational understanding of AI and how to use it in the business. This prevents you from having that bifurcation of some people have really good skills, some people have really bad skills, and the skill level between the highest and the lowest people in your company are growing all the time. That's known as a Dreyfus squared problem based on the Dreyfus scale of mastery. So 5 is complete master, 1 is a newbie, and some of the worst outcomes are when you try to pair masters with new people. So we're trying to avoid that problem by giving you a nice even foundation for everybody. So that's what the foundation series of education is for. We then move on to more specialized education, and that specialized education is a mastery of the tools that are going to be needed in your business. And the third part of the problem that stops a lot of businesses before they can even get started is they don't know where to get the specialty skills that they need as projects come along and they have to integrate them. So they are always feeling like they're in a search mode where they're trying to search out different ways of solving problems before they can do anything. So again, people, education, being able to build the skills is one of the big blocks. And a lot of times that doesn't even cause a project to fail. It causes a project not to be even taken out of the gate. So again, that's a problem that the AI Campus is designed to solve, and why we build education into our AI adoption roadmap. Another problem that we run into that's kind of related to the talent problem is a cultural resistance to change. And AI is a big change, and a lot of people are now in the culture starting to see AI as an enemy, not as a way of doing their jobs. And that's really unfortunate, and it's really a big problem. So what we try to do is use an approach based on being fully involved with the employees from a communication and a participation strategy. And the idea is that a lot of the resistance to AI that we see in the culture of businesses is driven by fear, uncertainty, and dread, the old FUD. And so what we like to do is be very open with employees, make it very clear as to why we're doing things and how we're going to do it, and the role that they are going to be playing and how important it is for them to participate. If they see themselves as being a big part of the solution, they're much less likely to see this as something that's coming for their jobs and forcing them to do a bunch of changes that they really don't want to do, they're unhappy about, and they don't see the point. When we can start incorporating them into all of our activities, getting their feedback, getting their buy-in, asking their advice, and showing them how much more productive they are, how much more they can get done, and all the new things we can do for our customers because they're starting to use these tools, the buy-in automatically happens. A lot of businesses don't do open and honest communication with their employees, and so you end up creating this secret cabal type of approach between the employees. They think there's this secret mission to replace them happening in the background, and that they're all going to be put out of the office at one day, and they don't really know what's going on. And so secrecy breeds contempt, and the employees are likely to sabotage everything we're trying to do if we're not open and honest with them about everything that's going on. Another common failure that is almost always a planning issue is when it comes to the governance world, and you run into issues with security, privacy, and compliance. And a lot of times when we start applying AI to some very complex businesses, we don't think about the compliance issues, what kind of data security we should be using, and how we can maintain privacy, or even what privacy laws are going to start applying to us. So from a governance standpoint, it's always better to do that at the beginning of the project. And in fact, it's better to do it before any projects have begun, so that you have policies in place and all of that information is known for all of your employees whenever they get ready to apply AI or any other technology to your business. A lot of times we'll find that a business already has problems with security, compliance, and privacy that have to be addressed and have to be documented before we can even think about doing an AI project. And so making sure that we concentrate on all of these areas, getting them documented, getting them put into the AI policies, and getting them updated on all of the other policies in the business makes projects go a lot smoother, and we can eliminate a lot of the late stage projects when all of a sudden we find out that there's a governance issue that we haven't included in our plan. So planning and governance goes a long way to avoiding this trap. Another common problem has to do with integration, and this can go both with a new AI solution and existing solutions that have already been rolled out in the business. A lot of times we'll use AI to create a point solution for a business to solve a very serious need. For example, we might need to do a telephone inbound calling agent to help answer telephones at night or on the weekends or in other languages, and we have to interface with legacy calendar systems and policy systems. Going back and making a integration to other systems increases the scope of the problem, and we decide we don't really want to do that right away. So our approach tends to be, we're going to create yet another point solution, and we know we're going to have to take on a little bit of technical debt to further integrate it in the future, but those are additional functionality that we're going to see, and it's going to be great. And so we can actually show that we're going to get more and more functionality as we do more and more integration and pay off our technical debt. On the other hand, there's also a lot of times where there are legacy point solutions that are sitting in a business and they don't integrate with anything. That gives us an opportunity with AI to go in and kind of understand the interface, understand how they work, and either find a way to integrate that solution into the business or to create a replacement for that standalone point solution that was taking care of something. There's an expression that the difference between an ordeal and an adventure is the mindset. And a lot of times these integration issues fall into that category. If we're thinking about them and looking for them and searching them out before we get started, and we're thinking about what we can do to leverage solutions to make them work better, well, then we're adding value. If we deal with these things up front and we document them and how they work, and we segregate them off into their own projects, give them their own scope, they don't cause problems for the AI project we're working on, and we can make them their own standalone projects. That's why planning. And our last problem that causes consistent failures with AI projects is high cost of the project and an uncertain ROI. Now, this is usually caused by not doing our homework, just like the rest of them. When we start looking at AI solutions, it's really good to know the total cost of the process that we're going to be involved in. So if we're going to address it through AI, it's really important to consider that we don't want to make this about AI. When we have a problem like this, we really want to treat it as any other business process reengineering problem. And that is, we really want to make sure we break it down and understand it before we get started working on it. And that means we've got to understand all of the costs involved in it. We have to understand what it does, and we have to understand the effect it has on the business so we can calculate what's going on. Also, because these things aren't really well thought out or well documented, we tend to not understand the true cost of them. So when we put together the cost of doing the AI project, or we get to the end of the AI project and add up everything we did, it looks pretty scary and the price is high. But then if we actually truly understood everything that was going on in that part of the business, well, we might have a better understanding of just how much money we saved. Understanding the business functions that you're addressing, understanding all of their costs, understanding how they affect the rest of the business is really important when you get ready to do that AI project. If you try to skip over that part because you're just so excited about doing something in AI, you're really going to have a hard time because it's not going to work. You're going to come out looking like you spent a whole bunch of money. You're going to look like the ROI isn't nearly what it should have been. And then you're going to get kind of dejected and your management's not going to be very happy. Whereas if we take the time up front to understand what it is we're trying to accomplish, document what the real costs are, and document really what we think it's going to take to address it, a lot of times the cost of the project and the return on investment is a little bit more clear and it pencils out. But a lot of times if we do that work and it doesn't pencil out, well, then that means we probably either shouldn't do the work or we shouldn't promise a huge ROI. And a lot of times you can justify doing a project not through ROI, but other reasons and other goals of the business. If you're going to do a project and the ROI is not there, but it's going to set you up to release a new product in 2 years, well, say that and justify it for that reason, not because it has a huge ROI. And if you do that right, you're going to be honest about your ROI, and you're going to get better and better at predicting the effects you're going to have as you do your projects. Those are our 7 top reasons that AI projects fail. There's kind of a theme to all of them. A lot of the things we do in the AI adoption roadmap are designed to alleviate a lot of these problems, not make them come up, and kind of nip all of these things in the bud so you don't have to worry about justifying the projects later on. We don't want to be in the categories of doing a post-mortem as to why the project failed. I'm Marty Milligan. Look for the links to book a time with me if you want to talk about AI on your project. We can have some free books down there if you really want to learn a little bit about ChatGPT, or you want to learn about how small businesses are using AI today and whether their approach is working compared to the bigger companies. And otherwise, like, share, do all the things, and we'll see you in the next one.